One of the more interesting debates since Battlefield 6 released, in my opinion, has been the whole idea of should Battlefield 6 have gone back to the old premium DLC system, or should it have kept up that whole live service thing that we had in something like 2042, and pretty much what we're seeing with basically every FPS game coming out these days. And the reason that I find this debate pretty interesting is because I feel like there's definitely pros and cons on both sides. But there actually came a point in time where pretty much all of these sorts of FPS games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, these sorts of things would release DLCs, and these DLCs are pretty much something that you see more often in single player games now, but basically it was the whole idea that you could get all of the new content like the maps, the weapons, those sorts of things. Occasionally there would be cosmetics as well, it just depended on what game you were looking at, and the game would then package all that content up into a premium bundle that you would then purchase separately after the base game. Nowadays that's not really the thing anymore. No really FPS games do that. The only games that I've personally seen with DLCs these days are, like I said, basically single player games, RPGs, those sorts of things, or you could probably more often than not get somebody to actually want to purchase something on top of the base game, typically because there's story expansions and missions and things like that that you get on top of what you already have. But the thing with multiplayer games is, can a premium system even survive in today's kind of gaming landscape? That's kind of what I want to explore in today's video. So before we do that, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications set to all so you can stay up to date with all of the Battlefield 6 content here in the channel, and let's just dive right on into it. So if you've never played Battlefield until Battlefield 6, basically the way Battlefield used to release content was that you would have a base game, and in that base game you had obviously your maps, your weapons, those sorts of things, and then they would release afterwards DLCs, which they called Battlefield Premium. And Battlefield Premium basically bundled all of the newer content, such as the maps and weapons, and you would purchase Battlefield Premium for a separate price on top of the base game when it came out, whenever it came out. So there wasn't really this concept of every now and then getting a content drop, every month getting a content drop, these sorts of things. You would get a bundle of stuff at a certain period of time until maybe the next bundle came out, but that wouldn't be the same as we see today, where they kind of trickle that content out over a certain period of time. A lot of other games also did this, and for the longest time they continue to actually do this exact model. If you were maybe a Call of Duty player in the old MW2, those sorts of games, Call of Duty Ghosts did it, Call of Duty Infinite Warfare did it, obviously a lot of games were doing it. Battlefield did it for a long time, and then everyone just kind of stopped doing it. And if you kind of remember a couple years ago when Fortnite released, a lot of games started to shift their monetization model to fit what Fortnite did. Now I do believe, and I'm not sure 100% about this, but I do believe Fortnite at one point was a purchasable game. It wasn't free to play, and then I think later on they switched to the free to play model. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I do kind of recall seeing something like this. So a lot of games started doing the free to play model and then releasing battle passes and microtransactions, and then they would give this sort of base content that you used to purchase in a premium DLC for free. So if there were any new maps, new weapons, those sorts of things, you would get that content, and then what you would purchase were cosmetic items, skins, camos, whatever it may be on top of that. It just depends on the game that we're talking about. And so Call of Duty, Battlefield, all of these games started to tack this system on as well. And what Call of Duty did was not just implement this sort of monetization system, they also added Warzone with MW 2019. And so obviously Battlefield kind of did a very similar approach to MW 2019 in almost a lot of aspects. They kind of are mirroring that approach. So they released Battlefield RedSec. And obviously with RedSec, it's free to play. You have a free to play base, you want to monetize that base. So what's the most valuable way to actually get monetization out of free to play players? Battle Pass microtransaction, or something of the like. Obviously, having a premium DLC isn't really going to be as popular with a free-to-play player because they don't want to pay for the base game's content, but maybe they're willing to pay $20 here and there for skins, and they're probably going to be playing often enough to justify purchasing a battle pass. So that's kind of what happened with free-to-play stuff, and because that model got more popular, you started seeing more actually premium FPS games take a shift away from the DLC system. And so obviously with Battlefield 6, we have live service. So every now and then we get free content, and then you gotta buy stuff like the battle pass. That's where their extra money comes from. But did this shift away from premium DLCs actually ruin the quality of the games that we're getting these days? In a way, you could argue for and against this point. So first off, let's talk about why exactly premium DLCs didn't really stick with a lot of people, because the thing is, if you bought the base game and then you bought the DLCs, you want to actually be able to play on the content that you just purchased. Well, the problem is the amount of people purchasing the DLCs was not enough compared to the amount of people who weren't purchasing those DLCs. So if you wanted to load into a match, more likely than not, you're not going to find as many matches on that paywalled content like you were on the content that just came with the game. There's just a lot of people that aren't willing to pay extra. Quite frankly, I can't blame anybody for not wanting to purchase content like maps on top of the base game, because in a way it just kind of feels like, well, what if those maps kind of are terrible, right? What if those maps aren't fun to play on? I just spent a bunch of money, and these DLCs could get expensive. We're not talking about just $5 or something like that, you know, the way maybe a battle pass is $10. Some of these DLCs could get up there in price. So there were just people who didn't want to spend that money because to them, well, I already paid. And obviously for people who have just put $60 on a video game, they don't want to have to a month later put another $30 and then another $30 later. By the end of the road, you're going to have spent a lot more on a game that maybe you just didn't even enjoy the extra content for, and there's not enough people who are going to be buying it for you to actually be able to play on the extra content. The same kind of phenomenon happened with Call of Duty as well. So what the live service model does is it gives everybody the ability to actually play on all of the maps, to use all the weapons, and to actually grind the game just like everybody else. The only thing that live service has paywalled now is battle passes, microtransactions, those sorts of things. But obviously, if you are a game studio and you're releasing content that's completely free, you're not actually getting money extra from all those maps that you're releasing. And maps in video games take a long time. In fact, they take months to produce a singular map. So if I'm releasing a map and it's not going to give me a payoff the way maybe it would have 5 years ago, I may not focus as much on the quality of the map because I'm just not making extra off of it. And in fact, once you've already gotten the consumer to buy the game, it doesn't really matter what you give them afterwards because they already bought the game. Now all you care about is getting people to purchase the microtransactions. Ultimately, you might put more effort as a full studio into the aspects that are monetizable than the stuff that isn't. Now, obviously, we don't know if that's how it works in these studios. I don't work in one or anything like that, so I don't know. But this is a pretty logical conclusion you could deduce from thinking about these sorts of things. If it's free, the quality might not be the same. At the same time, however, imagine if, for instance, Battlefield 6 came out and they were going to release the DLCs, and then they gave you Blackwell Fields and Eastwood and the couple of weapons that they added in Season 1, and they put it in a DLC for $30. You would probably be really annoyed that you just spent $30 on something like Blackwell Fields. You probably won't be happy with the quality of the maps, and especially because nowadays with YouTube and social media and stuff, it's more widespread to share opinions than it was in the very early 360 days and those sorts of things. You're probably going to see a bunch of people reviewing them and you're going to be like, wow, it's a good thing I didn't buy that. And so obviously they're gonna lose money because the quality sucks and people noticed it. Ultimately, I don't know if the live service model ruined the quality of the games, but what I can say is that they've definitely made it so that the games focus more on monetization than quality. It's just output stuff, but all we really care about is getting you to see the store, getting you to see the battle pass, and that's why these games are built around the sort of grind. Fear of missing out. Pretty much everyone does this. You don't want to miss out on having the cool stuff, so you're going to purchase the battle pass and you're going to buy skin bundles, because if all your friends are doing it or people that you know that you play with are doing it, then you'll want to do the same thing because that's just natural. That's human behavior. And so the same thing happens when they create these free-to-play modes. If you're playing Warzone and you want all the stuff in the battle pass, but it's just taking way too long to level up, you're gonna buy the base game and you're still gonna buy the battle passes and you're still gonna buy the skins because everyone in Warzone does that. And in RedSec, I haven't played RedSec. I don't necessarily know if people are purchasing skins a lot or things like that in RedSec, but people definitely will be buying battle passes because people want to grind for stuff in games. The psychology of the player base has changed over time, and that's why I think if today we all just scrap the live service model across the industry, it's not gonna function well with people, because games like Fortnite, games like Warzone, these sorts of things have altered the way players view content in games. They don't want to pay for that content. What they will be willing to pay for is cosmetic content, because it's shiny, it's flashy, it's like, look at this cool thing I got. And ultimately, if you're not dropping content constantly, people will get bored and leave your game. And this is kind of the way people are nowadays. Everybody wants the constant interactive distraction, the constant releases. Attention spans are pretty low, we all know that. People have been saying this exact thing for so many years now, but obviously that has altered the psyche of the player base. People who are younger, they just expect games to drop content more often than people who were younger in 2007 did. So ultimately, what I think is that live service as a concept isn't what's ruining games, it's just the whole mix that's happening, where you can justify lower quality because it's free, you focus on monetization because that's where the money's coming from, and at the end of the day, there's not really a lot of heart and soul in games the way it used to be. It's just the way it is nowadays. So even if we went back to the premium DLCs, I think it's not gonna be what it used to be. It won't be of a similar quality. You're just gonna get Blackwell Fields packaged into that. Anyways, though, it's an interesting debate. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, how you feel about the whole concept of live service versus premium DLCs, those sorts of things. Leave a like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications set to all so you can stay up to date with all of the content here in the channel. And that's all for today, folks.